Religion can be part of the problem, and has been many times, but even more so, religion can be and is part of the solution. In fact, most of the world's biggest challenges require religions to work together. That applies to the climate challenge, that applies to the challenges of migration, that applies to epidemics and many other things. If leaders from different religions show that they can talk to each other, that they actually can find an overlapping consensus in many ethical questions, that they can enrich each other by sharing their spiritual insights, and even in certain circumstances share prayer together, that is a wonderful example of promoting both peace and hope, and that also can, in the end, foster a world that is just, peaceful and reconciled. You know, it makes a difference when you actually meet people in physical space. Technology and social media is great, but it still makes a difference if you rub shoulders with people who were brought up in other spiritual traditions, and if you together face challenging and interesting questions that matter to how people can live good lives. Then that starts a process where prejudices go away, where new insights are born, and where basically hope is born. But you need to keep together both the theory of dialogue, so to speak, but also what I would like to call diapraxis, actually the action to promote just, peaceful and reconciled life. I think there are plenty of stories where you can tell each other, where you can say, I don't understand this, why are you putting this way? And then you get the dialogue going, and you understand, oh, now I understand, this I recognize from my tradition. This is not the way we would be expressing it, but I can feel some kind of connection here. And this is the small steps that widen our perspectives and also help us to recognize a spiritual human being in the other person. Now, if people are suspicious of dialogue between different religions, they often fear that the result is syncretism, that is, that you mix it up and lose identities and all that kind of stuff. It's not about that. It is about, by meeting, you know, identities are always forged in relationship to another person, another tradition. So by entering dialogue and interaction, you can be more safe, in a sense, in your own identity, in your own tradition, more grounded and yet more open. I think that's the most beautiful image one can have of a human person, to be grounded and at the same time very open. One of the most central symbol in Christianity, of course, is the cross, and is the sign of Jesus, of death, and the victory over death. But it's also the simplest image of a human being, because it's a human being grounded with arms open. And that's the most beautiful image of a human being I can think of. And this is possible also in interfaith dialogue. And it is not about ignoring the differences. We do not need to be in agreement about everything. We can have what I like to call overlapping consensus, where we say, here I think this way and I act this way and you do it this way, but here is an area where we have enough consensus so that we can go forth together. And there's another thing. I remember a situation when I was in a room with Jews, Muslims and Christians, and we didn't know each other, and it was a big group. We were about 600 people, And as the evening, which was about interfaith meeting, and it was a dinner, as we ate together, thought together, and listened together, it occurred to me very powerfully at that moment, there was more that united us with each other in that moment than there was with certain parts of our respective traditions. So we have this in common, that people who are interested in and see the necessity, for the sake of the world, the necessity of religions, talking to each other and working together, that they are criticized by parts of their own tradition. Do you have a neighbor that doesn't belong to the same faith tradition as you do? Or are you a person who says, I'm a person of no faith? And do you have a neighbor who has a faith? And have you ever talked about that? Have you ever had a cup of tea together? I would be curious to know what expectations you have on what could happen when religious traditions actually get to know each other more closely, and express their thoughts together, and most importantly work together to make this world a more just, peaceful and reconciled place. Religious traditions often have a cultural integrity, a spiritual depth, and a moral force that purely secular approaches can lack. And that makes it so important to bring these religions together and learn from each other, and work together to improve the state of this world and to meet the enormous challenges humanity is facing. 100 years ago, in Christianity, the main challenge was to bring different parts of the Christian family to the same table and get to know each other and work together. Now, 100 years later, the similar challenge is to bring religious traditions together to the table, to learn how to know each other, to work for peace, for justice and reconciliation, and to do that by discovering the enormous riches of spiritual wealth that have been entrusted to us.